Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the video, I talk about the viewer's pick of the week. So in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. But let's get started. This week I had a smaller haul for the number of books I got. I have 9 books, so let's jump into number 9. Which is Murderworld Spider-Man, issue 1. I read the first Murderworld, and I was pleasantly surprised. I kind of got on whim. I feel like I didn't have a lot of comics that week, so I got in. I had a fun time with it. Now, this is the one I was more interested in because I love Spider-Man, and there was not a lot of Spider-Man in this issue. It definitely continued more from the previous one-shots, and I feel like that reading order is a little confusing for people who thought this is just a one-shot. It's an issue 1. You're like, cool, I'm going to read this fun Spider-Man story, and they show up for, a panel, and then they continue another person's story. I just felt like it was very confusing, and I wanted to make it a little bit more self-contained than it actually was. So overall, giving that 1.5 stars. I also don't think the artwork was as strong as the previous volumes. It was very dark and gritty, and I just don't feel like it worked for this one. So 1.5 stars for me, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8. This one I got on whim. It was a smaller week, and it was a bigger book, but Timeless, issue 1. And I believe there's another Timeless book that came out. There was this other, I feel like a year ago. It had to do with Kang. And I wasn't as invested in that, but it feels like they've been building up this moment again for years on this one. And mostly building up this moment because Kang's going to be a big character in the MCU. And that's completely how this issue feels. It feels like it's more like they had to tell the story than it organically happened. And there's not much that happens. Like, there's definitely some setup, but setup that we already knew from the solicits of what is this missing moment. It's not like we really get answers from that. Now, it does look like this is going to continue into every other event. They pretty much said, hey, read Avengers. But also, we got Avengers Assemble. We have Sin of Sinister. We have the Fall of X. We have the Summer of Symbiotes. Like, every event you can think of, go read it. And it reminds me I don't love, events in general. And these are the type of events I don't like. Events that don't feel organic. So overall, giving that one 2 stars. And the artwork was okay. I think Greg Land's artwork worked for this better than maybe some other titles. I'm always neutral on his artwork, so giving that 2 stars. Moving on to number 7, I believe we're up to. And that is Midnight Suns, issue 4. The penultimate issue of this book that I did not know was ending. And I'm a little disappointed with that because I feel like there is some really good potential with this book, and a lot of the time has been taken up with action and not as much about the characters. And this issue in particular did that. And until I got to the end, I kind of forgave it because I was like, all right, they're building up moments, they're building up this team, and then I find out next issue it's going to end. I feel like the artwork is pretty solid for this book. Honestly, a very clean artwork for, as much of what's going on. It's a magic world with as many team members as it has. I think it's very clean and precise, the artwork. But I was pretty disappointed with the ending. I don't feel like a lot has happened in these issues, and it made it more of a forgettable miniseries where I feel like it could have been a really fun ongoing series. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is X-Treme X-Men issue 2, and this issue, I feel like tried jumping a lot. There was a lot of characters they tried to focus on, where I think issue 1 did a better job at just making it about Kitty and making it about Ogun. And this one definitely deals with Ogun stuff, which I liked. I liked the more psychological aspect of the book, but then you're like, all right, here's Bishop, here's Rachel, here's some story with Kitty, and it all has to do with the same theme, all has to do with the same plot of Ogun, but it just felt a little scattered this issue. And I like the style of art a lot, but there's times where the facial expressions just look a little weird to me. So overall, I still like this book a lot, and I want to see where it goes, but I don't think this issue was as strong as the first issue. So overall, giving that 3 stars. Moving on to number 5, which is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 16, and mostly the reason this is on my top 5 is I thought the artwork was spectacular, pun intended, maybe even amazing. It's an action issue, so you have to have spectacular artwork, and it really does a great job here. Ed McGuinness is so good at drawing Spider-Man. And I did not love the Ben and Peter story, which is most of the issue, but I like the cliffhanger enough where we get to see Peter in limbo, and I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish this whole issue was that instead of seeing a repeat of what happened last issue, which was Ben versus Spider-Man. And if you like Ben, if you like their dynamic, maybe you'll enjoy this one, but I'm kind of tired of evil Ben Reilly. He's not one of my favorite characters, so overall giving that 3 stars. Again, the reason it was jumped up was just because the artwork was really good for this issue, and it was mostly an action issue. Moving on to number 4, which is Action Comics issue 1050. I was on the fence of getting this issue in particular. I was going to start with 1051, but I knew that there was going to be like some sample stories in here. And overall, I had a good time with this issue, especially the middle story that was more driven to the Superman issue 1. I love Williamson's writing, and he really strikes gold here. And even though there's stories that you've seen before, we've seen Lex Luthor versus Superman, and I know that his whole identity thing is going to change. Like, we know that from the solicits. But I like that it felt kind of classic in a lot of ways, and I felt like he understood the character as well. I like the twist with Perry White. There were some interesting beats here, so I enjoyed that story. I will say the other parts were a little fast. So you have Manchester Black that has his own story, and I believe that's going to tie into Action Comics. Then we have the John Kent story, and they're all like 2 pages. The most of the meat of it is Superman issue 1, even though this is an Action Comics book. So in that regard, I don't think this is a perfect issue, but the meat of the book I had a fun time with. The artwork was pretty solid for it. There were some times where facial expressions could have been better, but I did like the artwork for it, and I liked the overall direction and spotlight for Superman, and that he's getting a little bit more love. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, a book I just have so much fun with, and that is Exterminators issue 4, and it's just bombastic action. It's bombastic fun. And that's this issue. There's just so many great jokes in this one. I just love the ladies teaming up. We even get a baseball X-Men reference in this one. The artwork could be stronger in points, but it's just, them going up against vampires. It's a very simple story that is driven by character, which makes this action more fun and sucks you in a little bit more. I'm going to be disappointed when it's over, but I just think it was a really good beginning, middle, and end type story, and excited to see where issue 5 is going to end up going. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, a book I was very much looking forward to, and that is Power Rangers TMNT 2 issue 1. This is the sequel to such a great story by Ryan Parrott and Dan Moore doing the artwork. I love this. I was really looking forward to it, and I feel like this was a pretty good start for the book. I will say, unlike the first volume, I do think you need to know a little bit more about the mythos of TMNT in particular. I don't think they really dived into too much Power Rangers mythos, but there were characters where I'm like, I don't really know who you are, because I'm not, I don't watch TMNT. It kind of passed my childhood. I was in that middle gap where there was the old show and then there was a newer show, but it was past my age. So I never really got into TMNT. But I thought the first volume did such a beautiful job at making you feel like you didn't have to really love either franchise to love this crossover. And I think that's what makes a successful crossover. And that piggybacks off of this one, where we get to see them friends already. And we get to see them interacting in their own playgrounds. And then the part I did like, in the title of this video, is that we get to see Casey Jones. I don't need to know TMNT to know who Casey Jones is, turn into this kind of ranger character. And I'm curious to see exactly where he's going to land in this one. It looked like he was more villainous in the end of this issue than he was a hero. Is he going to be kind of the Green Ranger of this story? And I love the design. I mean, Dan Mora is just so good at everything in art, from the design work to just the facial expressions, the action. It's just everything so beautiful to look at. And again, I thought this was a pretty good start to the series, and excited to see where it goes. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is She-Hulk, issue 9, and this is what Rainbow does so well in storytelling. She does a really good job at building story and making these epic moments feel bigger because of that. So obviously throughout this whole series, we've been building Jack of Hearts' relationship with Jen. And then we also even get to know these newer villains a little bit better. And that all comes to a head in this issue where the villains go up against Jen. Jack tries to save She-Hulk and ends up maybe dying because of it. And there's moments in this issue that I found a lot of fun. I think it could have built up a little bit better, the moment of the fourth wall breaking, but it still was just so creative and so in line for She-Hulk, if you know her history, which, again, Rainbow does such a good job at as well, keeping continuity with every story that you've ever read of She-Hulk, which I feel like is a rarity in superhero comics these days, where you literally remember every arc. There's a time, and every arc really was remembered here. Obviously, you pay tribute to the 80s stuff, but then there's a moment in this issue where they talk about that year where, she was just a Hulk that was more towards Bruce Banner's Hulk, and I love that. And I it makes me feel like, oh, cool. I read these comics for 20 years, I've read these comics for 10 years, or read this comic for a day and caught up and binge read for a reason, and everything feels connected. So I love that about this issue, and I thought the artwork was fun. I think Takashi's artwork works really well with this title. So yeah, overall, I thought it was a solid issue. It makes me want to see what happens next, what happens to Jack of Hearts, and really, really fun book. So giving that 4 stars. That's my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what was your pick of the week. And last week's pick of the week was from the viewers, Vanish issue 4. And here are some comments about that. Hope you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.